Austin was something of a prophet because when the decree of 1830 went into force, illegals came to Texas. So what kind of people came to Texas? Well, let's use two types as a way to describe what these newcomers look like. Remember, up until 1830, we've had legal immigration from the United States into Texas for the better part of about 6 to 8 years, depending on the first one to the last one, with the various impresario contracts. We've had some knuckleheads like Hayden Edwards and the Fredonia Rebellion, but we've also had some people that have come in and been very strict in adhering to law and order. We've had some illegals, but up to this point, they've been hanging out in the bottomlands of East Texas, not really agitating much. Well, after the decree of 1830, almost by definition, anybody that comes into to Texas from the United States is going to be illegal. So I want to talk about two different newcomers to Texas and use them as sort of types. The first, let's talk about William Barrett Travis. William Barrett Travis comes to Texas in May of 1831. This is after the decree. And he shows up and he's in his early 20s. Now, this guy was a native of the Edgefield district of South Carolina, which is a pretty famous frontier sort of cradle in American history, and he is certainly a frontier type. Now, he'd moved to Alabama and there taught school, married one of his students, and they had a son. Well, then his wife was pregnant with a daughter, gave birth, and Travis says, "That's not my baby." And in fact, accuses her of having an affair with the man, finds the man, and, according to legend and lore, kills him. Now that he has blood on his hands, and according to Southern honor codes, he was justified in doing what he did. He left Alabama and came to a place where you could have your past erased, and that would be Texas. And when he got to Texas, he looked around and said, "Here is a place for an ambitious young man to make a mark." Well, let's compare and contrast him to another guy that comes to Texas at about the same time, but it's not his first trip to Texas. This guy's name is James Bowie. Now, Jim Bowie is certainly a man of his place and time. If Travis is very southern, Jim Bowie is very frontier. Born in Kentucky, raised really in Spanish Missouri, and then frontier Louisiana down around Opelousas. He spent his growing up years working in the lumber industry, cutting cypress logs, floating them down the bayous of southern Louisiana off to market. He joined the militia with all the other guys down there in the Attakapaw Prairie country, and was willing to participate in the Battle of New Orleans, just didn't get there in time. But he, too, is a man on the make in frontier American Louisiana. In 1819, after the War of 1812, Jim Bowie is now in his early 20s, joins the expedition of James Long to Nacogdoches in Texas, and of course leaves in time to not be captured by the Spanish at that time, but he's had his first taste of adventuring in Texas. Goes back to Louisiana, follows a lot of different pursuits, but mainly they revolve around land speculation, establishing plantations, and then getting them up and productive, turning them around, and then selling them. Other buying and selling opportunities that may arise, he takes advantage of, including trafficking slaves imported illegally into Louisiana through the contraband trade, really ramrodded by people like Jean Lafitte and other coastal traders down in South Louisiana. So Bowie was willing to work outside of the law and inside of the law, but he had a nose for business. He also fell in love and was going to marry a girl from Alexandria up in Rapides Parish, but she died before they could get married. The other thing that Bowie was especially good at was defending his reputation and his honor, and he became a notorious knife fighter. And so it was that reputation of a man who knew how to put together a good deal, sometimes a little on the shady side, sometimes completely on the up and up, that would defend his own honor, was handy with a blade, and was now, in 1830, heartbroken over the loss of his fiancée, and he cashes out. So he's heartbroken, skilled with a knife, smart at business, and now, having sold out, has a pile of money. Where does a guy like that go? Of course, he goes to Texas. And he moves into Texas and he plays it completely legally. He comes in as a legal immigrant and goes and gets his Mexican citizenship. With his Mexican citizenship in hand, he ingratiates himself to the power elites in Bayard. So Travis coming in pretty much as an illegal, young man on the make, Bowie, shrewd businessman, playing by the rules. These are the types that are now attracted to Texas.